Diane Abbott.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday marked the start of Black History Month, so I will begin by paying tribute to a young woman already making history this month. Dina Asher Smith became the first British woman in 36 years to win a sprint medal when she won silver at the 100 metres in Doha. Tonight, she's aiming to go one better in the 200 metres, and I'm sure the whole House will wish her well.
Yeah. Well, that's not... There you go, sit down, sit down.
I think that was a preface to a question.
Mr. Speaker, if I may continue uninterrupted. Last week, my honourable friend, the member for Dewsbury, raised the very specific issue of how many of the hundreds of abusive and violent messages she receives use the Prime Minister's own words. The Prime Minister dismissed these concerns as simply humbug. Since that exchange, my honourable friend has received 4 further death threats, some again quoting the Prime Minister's words. Death threats and abuse is something that women across this House experience. Will the Foreign Secretary take the opportunity to apologise on behalf of the Prime Minister for his initial dismissive response?
Can I thank the Right Honourable Lady, and my eagerness to rise to the dispatch box was only because it is fitting in Black History Month as the Right Honourable Lady becomes the first Black MP to take to the dispatch box for PMQs. To say that she has blazed a trail, she has made it easier for others to follow in her footsteps, and that is something that I and every honourable member in this House can take pride in paying tribute to. She raises the increasing level of online and wider abuse that politicians get on all sides of this House, and I think we should come together to be clear that there must be zero tolerance for any abuse or any threats. And can I also say I found the level of abuse that the Right Honourable Lady has received online to be totally disgusting, totally unacceptable. At the same time, and I'm sure as a passionate champion of free speech, she will defend our right in this House to defend the issues of substance. The remarks that the Prime Minister, my right honourable friend, made were aimed at the suggestion that he couldn't describe the Surrender Act in such terms. It is absolutely clear, given the substance of the legislation, that it would achieve that and undermine the ability of the government to go and get a deal in the EU, which on all sides we want to achieve.
Diane Abbott!
So we can take it there is no apology from the Foreign Secretary. I raised a very specific point that the member for Dewsbury raised about the abuse she gets using the Prime Minister's own language. Yes. Mr. Speaker, deliberately disturbing billboards showing unborn fetuses have been put up in the London Borough of Walthamstow. They're upsetting for the women walking past, but particularly upsetting for the member for Walthamstow because these billboards are targeted at her in response to her work to decriminalise abortion in Northern Ireland. Abortion in Northern Ireland should be decriminalised on the 21st of October. What will the Foreign Secretary do to ensure that from later on this month, women in Northern Ireland will have the same human rights to legal and safe abortion as women in England, Wales and Scotland?
Well, can I say to the Right Honourable Lady, and she's referred to the other Right Honourable member and the abuse that she's received, that I and all members of this House, I know, believe it is totally unacceptable. There is a place for free speech, but we should never allow that to cross over into abuse, intimidation or harassment of honourable members on all sides of this House going about their business. The most important thing we can do on the specific issue that she addresses is get the institutions in Northern Ireland back up and running so that they can exercise their rights, their prerogatives on the behalf of the people of Northern Ireland.
Diane Abbott.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I noticed the Foreign Secretary hasn't said anything about those horrific posters, not posters anyone would want to see, particularly someone who's actually pregnant, as the member for Walthamstow is. Mr. Speaker, Labour last week reiterated its call to end the rape clause, which forces women to fill out a 4-page form to prove their child was born of rape to get financial help. Will the Foreign Secretary today back Labour's pledge to remove the abhorrent rape clause from universal credit?
Well, I would say that we've looked at this issue and we continue to look at it. I think on the subject of using inflammatory language, it's incumbent on all sides of the House to be very careful about it. But I know that my right honourable friend the Secretary of State for DWP, looks at this and will continue to take questions and scrutinise this very carefully so we get the balance right. Of course, I would just gently say to her that on the Labour side, they want to abolish universal credit and engage in an open spending spree on handouts. That is the wrong thing to trapping people into the welfare trap. On our side, we want to help those people from the poorest backgrounds get into work, and our record speaks for itself.
Diane Abbott.
How more dismissive can the Foreign Secretary be to people and families dependent on benefit? We're not talking about a spending spree. We are talking about a system which is fair, which is just, and doesn't subject people to undue humiliation. Mr. Speaker, last week, the 100-year-old travel company, Thomas Cook, went out of business. We know that 72% of its workers are women. We also know that although governments around the world stepped in to save subsidiary Thomas Cook companies in their own countries, the UK Business Secretary thought it wasn't her job. Can the Foreign Secretary explain to those workers, some of whom are with us today, why their government sat idly by?
Well, first of all, I would say to the Shadow Home Secretary, we didn't sit idly by. The efforts of the government to make sure that those holiday makers and those travellers who are caught overseas could be returned back to the UK, coordinated by the Transport Secretary, have been very effective, and that has required a huge amount of cross-government work, including in my own department. In relation to whether the government should step in and bail out Thomas Cook, it's very clear, if you look at the financing behind it, that it wouldn't have rendered the company more sustainable. It wouldn't have saved the jobs in the long run, and we are of course concerned to make sure that in the long term we've got a sound economic basis. We've created 3 million new jobs in this country since 2010. We'll continue with that. What we're not going to do is routinely bail out companies that are unsustainable. That's not the right way to go.
Diane Abbott.
Nobody's asking the government to routinely bail out companies. What we are asking the government is, why won't you even meet with the workers? Mr. Speaker, whether it's women members in this House, women claiming benefits, women's reproductive rights in Northern Ireland, and the failure to support women workers at Thomas Cook, isn't this a government letting women down?
Well, I'd say to the right honourable lady, on this side of the House, we're proud to be on our second female Prime Minister. And
I want to hear the First Secretary's answer. He's embarked on his answer. I want to hear it. I think the House will want to hear it, and everybody else will want to hear it. Mr. Raab.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Labour front bench are pointing to my right honourable friend. Well, I'd like to take that opportunity to pay tribute to the right honourable member from Avon for her accomplishments in tackling human trafficking, for her accomplishments and drive to tackle violence against women, and for the domestic violence bill that we'll be introducing in this House today for further debate.
Diane Abbott.
The Foreign Secretary hasn't mentioned the fact that there are over 600,000 more women and girls in poverty now than in 2010. And can I just say gently to him, I was a member of this House when Tory MPs defenestrated the then female Prime Minister, Mrs. Thatcher. And I've been a member of this House. I've been a member of this House when Tory MPs worked their will to the immediate the immediate female Prime Minister. And it seems to me that Tory members of Parliament may on occasion make women their leaders, but they need to learn, they need to learn how to treat them less cruelly.
So, can I just gently say to the Shadow Home Secretary in relation to Margaret Thatcher, that if she wants to talk about treating them better, she might have a word with the Shadow Chancellor, who talked about going back in time to assassinate her. That's not appropriate language on her side. She talked about Labour's record. Can I just remind her that because of Labour's economic mismanagement, we saw female unemployment rise by over a quarter. Now they want more debt, more borrowing and higher taxes. On our side, we're proud. Female employment at record lows, higher percentage of women on FTSE 100 boards, and the gender pay gap at a record lower than under the last Labour government.